So moving on to the next one, um, I saw ego can be a devastating thing because if you let it overrule judgment, you can get into trouble. And when you're trying not to look like you're losing the battle, if you want to put it that way, you could lose more than you were bargaining for. And if you could really miss out on an opportunity to solve something that you've been working hard on. So last summer we um, watched the battle between United and Dortmund regarding the transfer of Jadon Sancho, and it seemed to be a big gap between what Dortmund wanted and what Man United were offering. Dortmund, who wanted closer to 120 million euros, and United would not go past 105, 108 million, I believe. And at the time, I remember reading this, and I was one of those people who was critical of Ed Woodward and his colleague that were negotiating the deal, and I thought they messed up. I really did. I'll be fair. I thought they messed up, and I was quite impressed by Dortmund's strong showing. There was no maneuver to fix and mend nothing. There was no budging. They were sticking to that valuation, and in the end, it looked like a failed transfer window to most people, um, including me. But now you hear reports that Dortmund are suffered losses of over close to 90 million, that they are urgently trying to make those funds. This is due to losses in COVID, obviously, and that they're offering Sancho on a cheaper deal, if that makes sense. So they're not holding on to that valuation anymore. And I think this is where they messed up because, if I remember correctly, the final offer from United was 92 million. So that deal would have all but cleared all of um, Dortmund's financial issues if they had gone through with United. And when you consider what they bought Jadon Sancho for, that would have been a huge return. It was a very good deal. And and they also misjudged the player's reaction. They thought that because he was not pushing for a transfer, because he was being quiet, he was being loyal and supportive, that it would be fine. But we've seen that he's been off the boil first few months of the season. He hasn't been himself. His mind was clearly in Manchester. He was already ready to move. So not only was the COVID that hit his value, but his state of mind affected the player, um, affected his performances, and that has brought down his value as well. And there's currently nobody with the current financial situation that could afford to buy a player for 100 plus million. So ultimately, and now with United, I know they lost the other day, but they're still so far in the title race. As crazy as it sounds, they it looks like a bad deal. It looks like one they missed out on, and they should have taken it because right now, 92 million for Sancho would have looked like a steal for them, and United would have looked like they've been, I don't want to say fleeced a little bit, but taken when you consider what Chelsea paid for Kai Havertz. And I think that was the range. That was the correct range because those two deals were going side by side and people were doing a lot of comparisons. And I think that was the valuation range that he should have been on. The 120 million euros was way off. They should have got him for 70 to 90 million. And United offered the whole 92 million. And I'm not offering hindsight because I was impressed by their ability to hold off United and stay firm. But looking back, this is what happens when you let ego get in the way of I don't want to say common sense, but when you lose sight of what your priorities are and your needs. They were more concerned about how it appears, how maybe they got greedy, rather than what do we need, what's best for the club. Do we have a big losses incoming that this would cover, and do we hold on to a disenfranchised player that has already made the move? And these decisions weren't thought about, or they weren't ignored. So now they're in this predicament where you can't say bargain deal, but uh, they need the money and they're desperate to sell. And I don't think there's that many takers. I don't think there's that many people that have the money. And it wouldn't make sense for United to come back after signing Diallo and the other players they did in after they fell to the temple of Sancho. So it's an interesting thing, but how 6 months on, everything looks slightly different. And I think that if you ask Dortmund, they'll do it all over again. They would have met United at that table. And I think that would be a lesson for them in future. You know, you should, you have to have standards and principles, but when you let ego get in the way of making your decisions, it could backfire badly. And this is now costing Dortmund. At the very least, they'll probably lose about 10, 20 million out of this. Um, and and somebody is going to get a great player for a very good deal soon. It might still be United. It wouldn't make sense to me the transfer policy, but we'll see what happens. I would love to see him in the Premier League, obviously. Um, Last night we saw Tottenham play Liverpool, and I think most of us are expecting, Liverpool been in a poor form. If you look at the style of plays, they would have suited perfectly what what how should we say it? The Tottenham style suited perfectly to Liverpool style of play. They would have let them have the ball, and they would have countered with Harry Kane and Son and picked them off. But that's not what we saw yesterday. What we saw yesterday was the comeuppance of Daniel Levy's long-term transfer policy, where, to make it short, there is none. He's basically invested at best an equal amount of what they've gained. But when Pochettino was there, he had the lowest net spend. I think he didn't even have a net spend till about the last season or two. And as soon as this team is held together by a few key players, and as soon as one of them goes off or one of them is not available, that's the end of their season. That's the end of the game. That's the end of their season. As soon as Harry Kane got injured, that was the end of the game. Son is a great player, but he's not the. He can't take them on. He can't lead them by himself for the rest of the season, and he can't lead them. Uh, Last night against Mane and Salah and all the great players Liverpool have. What you saw was this team that's built on one or two players, and they've been trying to get through, and hide the failings on Daniel Levy's part with regards to the transfer policies over the last 5 years. Their net spend is a joke, and Pochettino was making wine out of water over there. He was just making normal players look great, and he kept them competitive. But last night's loss, and depending on how long Kane is out for, the rest of the season's progress or non-progress of Tottenham is firmly on Daniel Levy. It's not on Mourinho. It's not on the players out there. He is The lack of investment over the last 5 years has caught up with him, and his solution of getting world-class managers to cover that gap has it's not a long-term plan, because as you were seeing with Pep, the more investment you get, the longer you're going to stay up top. It looks like City are back. Most likely they'll win the league and they'll be 4-3. And it's just changed now. It doesn't matter how good the manager is, how much motivation and quality he can implement and get out of these players. If you don't match your rivals for uh, incoming players, transfer policies, etc., then you're going to get left behind. And that's what we're seeing at Tottenham. That's what was happening yesterday. The moment Kane was off, it was over. And there's nothing more. Um, there's no one else more responsible for that than Daniel Levy.